Yeah, what I'm going to share with you this morning is something that I developed for Kala Ikebana Society, which is something founded by Trungpa Rinpoche decades ago, in the hope that the contemplative understanding of the flower path could continue into the coming centuries. It is somewhat at risk worldwide of diminishing in depth and profundity and practice element, and has the vulnerability, as many things in the world, to become a more materialistic situation where it's more of an ego-gratifying art show-off product that everybody goes wow to, and also that it's not understood as a mind training. This is a centuries-old warrior art, part of the samurai tradition in Japan, although it began earlier. Ikebana is said to have actually begun in the 7th century, during Prince Shotoku's time. And there's a very famous statement by his nephew, Ono no Imoko, who arranged flowers in Prince Shotoku's memory for the rest of his life by a pond. And in the 15th century, the descendants of people who had seen how he placed flowers in the temple in Prince Shotoku's memory, those people were said to become the forefathers of the origin of the first school of Ikebana in Japan, which was called Ikenobo, which meant small temple or hut by a pond, after Ono no Imoko's offering practice. And it's said that he stated that a flower should never just be haphazardly stuck in something. It's kind of a modern way of saying it, but placed in such a way that its vitality and characteristics came alive, like vitality. So there's a very old quote in the Japanese chronicles from the Heian times, which was 7th, 8th century. Oh, there's a plane overhead. I'm sorry, I can't control the sound. I have this all set up in my studio.
Yeah, it's better.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's better. Thank you.
There will be planes because there is an airport not too far from our neighborhood. And so where was I?
They should be placed with vitality.
Right, placed in such a way that they had vitality. And it's said that the first school of Ikebana in the 15th century was named after where he arranged flowers for Prince Shotoku. And so the name of the school is Ikenobo, and it means small hut by a pond. And out of that, over 3,000 schools have been born of Ikebana over the coming centuries. But what I noticed was that in studying the Sogetsu school of Ikebana, which is my training for 30 years, I just did a workshop with them on Zoom the other night in Tokyo. It's really fun and good. But the contemplative aspect of slowing down and really looking and maybe seeing, which Trungpa Rinpoche taught in the Dharma art teachings, that perception is a process, and that there's a lot of room for perception before conceptualization takes over. But it's said that it happens in a 500th of a second. So what I noticed was that the modern tendency is to use things. We look at something and we tend to say, what can I do with that? And I noticed the same tendency in people who studied Ikebana for a long time. It's partly that it becomes so instinctual that you look, see, and feel and can place almost, it feels simultaneous. You're not separate from what you're arranging. That's the kind of the Zen aspect and view of this art form. All of the arts in Zen are said to be that you synchronize yourself with your materials and the techniques and the skills that you use until you become one with them. And therefore it becomes activity. So if people could mute themselves, unless you have something to say, I'm hearing some noise in the background. You'll hear some birds, I hope. So the notion is you practice a form to transcend the form ultimately, and then there's freedom for you and whatever's being expressed. And Trungpa Rinpoche had a phrase, he said, there is unconditional expression, like mushrooms in a meadow or thunderstorms. He also said, and this is in the book of calligraphy that was published after his death, it's a very beautiful quote. The part that I want to remember this morning is very short. It's that we could see something without ego's complexity. So this morning is really an exercise in that, and also the natural kind of, when we feel appreciation towards something, it becomes natural to want to share it. And so that's kind of the basis of bodhicitta, or offering flower here. It's like you could say we're doing almost a flower tonglen, because once something becomes awakened in the room that's offered for other people's sense perceptions, when it comes from a place of care and openness, it affects the atmosphere. And Trungpa Rinpoche was interested in studying Ikebana when he was in England on a scholarship, I believe. And he saw Ikebana for the first time, and he said he was struck by its power to create atmosphere. And he also said it's like reality, both beautiful and cruel. He said, in fact, it's like the Buddha's teaching. So having taught at Naropa for 30 years, I worked with so many students from different traditions and different walks of life. And a lot of the time people were afraid to cut their flower once they developed sympathy for it. And so I've always said that's a good thing. But, you know, we do pull a carrot out of the ground and then crush it between our teeth. Even the gentlest vegetarian is subject to that necessity to survive. So a love of beauty and the elegance of uplifting ourselves and others could be considered part of the survival of the human species. And since Ikebana engages with, from the very simplest dot of freshness, you could say that it contributes to the survival of humanity. Originally, it was seen as something that brought outdoors indoors, so that one didn't feel separate from nature. I can give lots of talks on all these things in history and development, but I wanted to give you a little bit of atmosphere of what we're entering into this morning. And again, I developed this exercise because I felt that people had become too focused on what to do with the flower and maybe hadn't taken time to experience it first. And once I was at the Kalapa court when Trungpa Rinpoche was alive, and I have a kind of chronic nerve pain condition from my spine that I've had since I was 15. So I always have nerve pain all over my body, and it's always shifting and changing. And I had heard that Trungpa Rinpoche could whack you. There's this Tibetan whack you could get, maybe not dissimilar to the Zen approach with the stick, which is very relieving. It's a wonderful offering of the Zen master. But I had heard that Tibetan had a thing that they could hit a spot and maybe the pain would dissolve. And so one night we had a Tibetan dinner at the court that my husband had cooked, my first husband. And I asked Rinpoche afterwards if he could whack me. I thought maybe it would liberate all the nerve pain and hit the right spot. And I described it to him, and he just kind of looked at me. And then he said, well, you know, you could experience it first and conceptualize it later. Did you hear that? Were you able to hear that? There's another plane coming overhead.
Yes.
Okay. You could experience it first and conceptualize it later. So I developed this exercise to help bring people into their felt sense, because I felt that when people train in Ikebana in the West, there's too much efforting to do it right and to do it well and to be correct, which is our educational conditioning. We're very focused on the right answer. And as Dogen said, not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing is most intimate. Now, neighbors cutting their edging with the machine. Can you hear it in the background? Sorry, this is why I wanted to do it in the studio, but I couldn't. So, not knowing is most intimate. It's a quote by Dogen. So that's why I asked you to cover your stem with a damp cloth. And maybe we could begin with just a moment of resting. And if you don't mind, to close your eyes, knowing that things are within reach, that you'll be able to reach under the cloth, or you can peel the cloth off when I ring. I have a little gong here somewhere. Beautiful cushion. So let's just take a moment to settle into our spot wherever it is. Just listen to any sounds that are in your environment as a way to relax the overemphasis we tend to put on our visual sense. Our eyes are working for us all the time. So we have some closed eyes, soft eyes. Let your eyeballs relax into their sockets, even if you haven't had coffee yet. And you can be standing or sitting or whatever is comfortable for you. Take a moment to just feel your body. Let your heart area just kind of relax, knowing that it's cradled within your chest and your ribs and supported by your spine. Our hearts don't need to work at knowing. And now if you could approach your tray or however you've laid your materials out, and keeping your eyes closed, reach underneath and pull forth a stem while maintaining closed eyes. I've learned that bringing people into their tactile senses is the way to go in modern society. And begin to let your hands explore the shape, the texture, the temperature, the weight of what's here in your hands. You might even hear the sound of your hand moving along the stem. And we're going to take, a good 3 minutes to just explore through our sense of touch. And from time to time, I'll guide it a wee bit. So just notice if there's any self-consciousness or embarrassment at being a grown-up, touching something with your eyes closed. And just let that be there. All of our experiences are welcome. Our awareness is a guest house for experience. So let yourself be alone with what's in your hands. And feel free to let other parts of your skin also interact with the stem that you're feeling, because we may feel we know something through our fingertips, but actually textures feel and temperatures can feel very different to the back of our hand, palm of our hand, our cheek, lips, throat, wrist. Skin is very sensitive. And so you could let other parts of your body participate in sensing this stem, which gives us a wider range of what it, quote, feels like. And again, just noticing any shyness you have about that. I'm not looking at you. I have my eyes closed too. Notice if boredom, restlessness, or impatience arise, and just being hospitable to them is part of the weather of your being. And notice how the rest of your body responds to participating in this. Where are you awake? Noticing thoughts or images arising, letting them be what they are, but also letting them go, and coming back to yours. You might notice your mind creating mental images or guessing at colors. These are just such a part of our engine, wanting to know. So in about a minute, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes with the sound of the cymbals. Please keep them closed until then. And again, just notice boredom, restlessness, or not wanting to stop. And please be generous with trying different parts of your skin. Nietzsche said part of the innate quality of a human is to be gentle, that we could touch things and sense our world. Space out, just come back to your sense of touch. Touch is the object of mindfulness. Coming back from thought. And so when you hear the sound of the chime, just let your eyes open and experience everything you experience. So you might choose to position what you're holding in a certain way for when your eyes open. That's entirely up to you. And so continue allowing yourself to experience whatever you experience. But now you can also engage your visual perception to enjoy fully, in detail, what you're holding in your hands. So please go ahead with that with your open eyes. Notice whatever you notice. Another plane. Sorry, notice whatever you notice. There's a lot to look at beyond just the face of the flowers, so really take your time. Pretend you're stuck in an elevator and this is all you've got and no help is coming, but you're going to be there for a couple of hours, so you got one friend to hang out with here. A leaf, stem, you know, you can look at it from upside down and sideways and really look carefully. As you move it, there might be shadows changing on it. Really allow yourself to explore. Again, noticing any impatience or boredom or shyness, or even a sense of clumsiness, like, I don't know how to do this. Just let that be part of your innocence. Notice that your sense of touch is still involved, even though it may have become a little more peripheral at this point. We're still engaged in a touching, feeling sense. Ikebana is a tactile art. So now close your eyes for a moment. Again. Can you hear me okay? Somebody nod? Yeah. Close your eyes and see what visual memory you have of what you've been looking at. Just close your eyes for a moment and see if you have an after image. The leaf or the flower or the twiglet, blade of grass. And then open your eyes again, afresh, and see if there's anything perhaps you haven't seen or noticed. There's a Japanese term, ichigo ichie, which comes from the tea culture in Japan, and it means one time, one chance. One time, one meeting. There's just this moment. And as we know, all life is fleeting, and nothing says that more clearly. Living stem. So now I'd like to hear from any of you who could share any aspect of your experience thus far this morning. Could be while your eyes were closed, you reached under the cloth, could be sensing anything you noticed about your mind, your senses, what you actually have selected as a stem or someone selected for you. And I will do my best to turn up the volume here so I can hear you over the guy who's trimming his garden. Maybe I'll mute myself while you are speaking so you don't have to hear this machine. And then I'll come back on because I'd like to respond.
Well, I can share. First, thank you. This was a very interesting and lovely experience. I was walking in a park yesterday by the water, by the Long Island Sound, and there's some areas that are weedy with lots of tall grasses. So I had in my mind that I was gonna try to find something for today. So I have a little Swiss Army knife with a scissor, and I cut one of the tall grasses, and then I just picked up a very small twig that was on the ground. And then I went to the market and did some shopping, and there were, I love yellow flowers, soft yellow cut flowers. And so they had very freshly brought in a whole bouquet of yellow carnations. So I put the whole group in a vase, but I cut one for this exercise. So the three, there were three stems of different kinds of flowers and cuttings under the cloth. And I, by feeling them, I knew they were also different in feeling, which was the carnation, and I just picked it up. And I don't know what you could see, but there's one open bud, it's small. And there's one that's totally closed. Okay, can we see that? And
Very sweet.
I was thinking, because sometimes when they're this tightly closed, the cut flowers, they don't open, they just fall off. So some of my feeling was mixed with wondering about, would this little guy ever open, and would I, can I keep it alive long enough to see that? So, and then I put it to my heart, because sometimes when we meditate or I do yoga, or even in prayer and temple, there are parts where you put your hands over your heart. So I found that very delightful. And then just holding it like as if it were an offering. Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you. Let's hear from some more people. That was wonderful. And anything you experienced on opening your eyes, on thinking, oh, I imagined it was a different color, noticing the activity of your mind, anything at all. Thank you. This opens our soft spot, working with touch, I think, very much. Mm-hmm.
I was reminded when my eyes were closed and I was feeling all of the detail of my flower. When I was in grade school, I was partnered with a boy named Jerry Manning, who was blind. And what I felt when I was feeling my flower was Jerry's hands when he used to feel my face. And that was a really wonderful, wonderful memory. And then the second thing that I felt was when I felt the buds on this flower. I felt that wonderful potential that was that's contained in this bud. So thank you for allowing me to have this experience.
Just that those tears are just priceless, aren't they? we realize, regardless of what's occurred in our life, our heart is basically home.
I have something. I
I
have,
had a student at Naropa who was deaf mute. And I wondered, how can I teach someone who's deaf mute? And I had a student who was legally blind from birth. And she said, can I take your class? Depth perception. And I said, can you read? And she reached out and I said, oh, you have enough depth perception. You can decide a different kind of seeing. Thank you. Another person.
you want to say something?
Yep. You
Oh.
go.
When I was touching the flower with my eyes closed, I felt very cautious. I didn't want to damage it or hurt it. And then when I opened my eyes, I was so amazed at the intricacy of this thing that I rarely look at, the extraordinary detail and zillions of little parts.
Were you going to say something?
I'm talking, can you hear?
Yes.
Sorry, I lost you for a moment. My thing cut out.
But the main thing was that I felt very sad. I felt sort of the heartbreaking beauty and impermanence of this thing that I was holding. It really touched my heart and made it hurt a little bit.
So in Japanese culture, that's called your heart, mind, kokoro. And the notion of warriorship here is, the samurai, when they battle and were numbed by the horrors, could come back and re-feel the tenderness of being human through handling a flower and looking and seeing. So you expressed sad joy, the essence of Shambhala.
Yeah, it was very, I felt it.
It's all there in something very simple, like closing your eyes, touching and opening. Yeah. Yeah. So good that we can cry. We should treasure that. Thank you. That's called looking and seeing, because seeing is also feeling. Go ahead.
I had a similar experience. The experience, I have this maple branch that I pulled out from under my toe. It's really beautiful. And the experience of feeling it was very true to my expectation, but the experience on opening my eyes was overwhelming. It was as if each leaf was like reaching.
Sofu Teshigahara said, who's the founder of the Sogetsu School in 1927, he said, when we interact with the plants, they become human.
Yeah.
In the Nihon Bashi Chronicles, it says, all plants can speak. Back in the 6th century, that was written.
Well, it's good that my daughter escaped. She'd be so embarrassed by me right now.
I've worked with many people who were just totally embarrassed doing this, but then they cried or laughed or told us.
I'm not embarrassed. She would be embarrassed.
How old is she?
She's 13.
How old is she? Oh,
13.
that's a good age to be super embarrassed at mom with.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Liz.
It's actually said that in the Dharma art teachings and in the Shambhala teachings and the Buddhist teachings, that actually direct perception is so rich and brilliant that that's why our awareness is dimmed, because we actually just aren't experienced in how to be with that. And so the word for meditation, and this is the kind of meditation we're doing, the word for meditation Tibetan is gom, which means to become familiar with. So exercises that help us open to ourselves and our senses are becoming familiar with how to be with things as they are, which apparently we shut down to because we get a little scared when things are so much. But actually, they are us. In time, we won't be overwhelmed. We'll just radiate.
It would be maybe.
What is your name? I don't see it on the screen.
Liz.
Liz, what were you going to say? And then I'll shift to another person.
It would be maybe difficult to go about your day and get things done with that much perception all the time.
Not when we become at home in it. When we're at home with the power of real human perception, it's not overwhelming anymore. But when we're in the path of opening, we do have to pace ourselves. Sometimes be more pragmatic, sometimes fall into the romance of a leaf. It's Rinpoche once said, Dharma art is being able to fall in love with what you perceive. So, another person, I think a gentleman was going to say something.
Hi.
Your name?
Tony.
Tony. Oh, I see
Yeah.
it now.
So I got up early this morning and picked this flower and put it under the wet cloth, and I planted a bunch of different things this year, and of course it reminds me of my grandmother as a young man growing up. I have a lot of emotional sort of attachment. I believe it's a chrysanthemum, but one of the really interesting things that happened this morning during your exercise with my eyes closed, when I was feeling it and feeling up underneath and then over the top, there's an actual sort of hole in the top of the flower, which is part of the whole structure of the thing, that in all the years that I've seen these particular flowers, I've never actually noticed before. So my fingers, the touch with my eyes closed, taught me something about the structure of the flower that I had never ever observed before, this beautiful filigree in the center of it. So thank you.
Lovely.
Can you show us?
Yes,
Yeah, this is what.
the same.
Thank you.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, this is beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She's calling you. Did she? She left. She fell off. She fell off. Oh, we lost Alexandra.
Excuse me. What? Say it again.
You lost Alexandra?
Yeah. I can send it to you again. And the password is 108 108. So Alexandra has computer problems, and I'm going to be sending her the link again so that she can join us again. She got her iPad overheated. And so bear with me for a minute while I send her the link. I hope.
Okay, I'm back. I'm on my iPhone and I have it in the shade cooling down. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Sorry, if we could go back to the gentleman. I wasn't able to hear anything you said. My apologies. This little miracle gave up for a moment.
Back to me, was it?
Yes. Could
Okay.
you say what you wanted to again? Thank you.
I picked it early this morning in my garden and brought it in and put it under the wet cloth. And it reminds me very much of my grandmother in many ways, these particular flowers. It's a chrysanthemum, I believe. And the interesting things is just my concept of the flower and all the times I've seen them. You know, when we did the exercise where we had our eyes closed and we felt gently all the different parts of the stem and the flower, I actually discovered a little part of the flower that I had not noticed before. And that is, I showed it to the others, it's the little center in there. I don't know, you know, my visual acuity was not, I've never really actually noticed that little filigree circle there. So that was a beautiful thing for me actually to sort of discover another part of the flower and the plant today that I, you know, in all the years I've seen these things, I hadn't actually noticed before. So thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, and for bringing your grandmother in. And it's very interesting, the names of things, don't you think? Since everyone picked their own stem, maybe there were a few people who were able to surprise each other. We tend to think we already know the names of things. And it's a very interesting area to explore altogether. Is the name what we see? Can we see things without names? Usually we don't feel we know what something is until we have a name for it. And somebody might be able to comment on that process as well. It's a very rich area of perception. Trungpa Rinpoche taught in the Abhidharma teachings, which are an examination of how perception occurs altogether and ego forms and so on. He said it happens in a 500th of a second that we conceptualize what we perceive. 500th of a second. So sitting practice is an opportunity for that engine of conceptualization to fall apart and the natural openness to shine through where we can perceive directly and become more at home in our own tenderness and unafraid of tearness. I always call tears warm water from the heart, regardless of what kind of sounds accompany them. So this flower in the English language is actually called a marigold. So just take a moment to notice whether that changes your experience of the flower when a different name is given to it than chrysanthemum. It has a very distinctive aroma, as chrysanthemum does as well. They're supposed to be terrific at keeping bugs off roses.
Bugs out, yes. Keeping bugs out.
Yes.
In your vegetable garden.
It's not working very well with the Japanese ladybug, though, apparently. That will eat anything.
Japanese beetle is what we've got up here in Connecticut. They've just overrun.
They just arrived this summer in Boulder. I'm seeing their shiny shells in my flower bed. They're really hungry. All right, let's hear from someone. Oh, go ahead.
No, they love roses for some reason, the Japanese beetles. They just love the roses. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hello to your grandmama, wherever she may be. Someone else? Before we go on, I want to keep track of time here. We have only 17 more minutes and we have another step to take together. 2 steps, 3 steps, 4 steps, 5. Maybe one more person?
Yeah, I can say something.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see you and hear you.
Yeah, my name is Amelia and I have been gardening for a long while. And this morning I got up and I had such a choice of things to pick up, but I always pick, I like the hostas because they are a background, it's a beautiful background. So I got the hostas over my hosta leaf. And I realized when I closed my eyes that putting it against my forehead, the touch feeling was very different.
Yes.
Your hands. And I put it against my forehead and against my face, and I could feel every single vein going through the leaf. And it was a wonderful feeling. And putting your fingers through the curve and how it's all directed in so many ways. And when I opened my eyes, I could see even more. I could see the curvature, the waving, and so much more. Thank you so much.
And in that experience, did you have moments where you just felt or saw them as opposed to had an internal dialogue about it? Did you have any moments where there was a gap from internal dialogue?
Yes, but the gap was to the past. Because when I was a kid, my mother one time, she was cooking and cooking. She said, come here. And she was peeling an onion and she said to me, look, Emilia, look, Emilita. She said, how beautiful this onion is. And she started peeling the onion and showing me every layer of it. She said, look at the veils in between. How can this be so beautiful? And ever since, the memories of looking at things like that, I mean, it brought it back today too. Thank you.
Oh my, I just got that straight in the center of my chest, warm feeling. So I want to just acknowledge something. One of the main aspects of the Dharma art teachings is called art in everyday life. So your mama transmitted that to you right there in the kitchen.
In so many
and the
ways.
whole notion of meditation is uncovering a state of mind that can experience and perceive in a way that naturally we appreciate the world around us. And that helps us have a sense of how to handle the world around us. So Khandro Rinpoche, a Buddhist, very fierce, amazing woman Buddhist teacher, she said to me once at Shambhala Mountain Center, we always met. I always cried when I saw her, and we always met whenever she was around. My first husband had been a teacher to her predecessor, who she was a reincarnation of. And she said to me, oh, well, in your culture, the Shambhala culture, Shambhala Buddhist culture, flowers, Ikebana, is a practice of elegance. And I asked her, what do you mean? And she said, because I didn't want to assume I knew what elegance meant to her. And she said, well, for example, we monastics have our robes, and we learn how to handle our robes in dressing ourselves and caring for them. And that becomes the basis for everything in our life. And she said, you people have Ikebana, like touched by her. I thought she thought flowers were a little bit trivial, and she really blew my mind. So much for preconceived expectations. Thank you, that was very lovely. So art in everyday life, this practice of how to handle a stem could be the basis of how we make our cup of coffee or offer someone a plate of food. So we'll go into that in a moment. Is it all right to transition now, or is there anyone who'd like to say anything about the contrast between conceptualization? Did anyone have like a yearning to know what color it was who didn't know, or was surprised even though they'd seen it before, or noticed thinking? Anyone who could comment on that contrast? Okay, it's not necessary. I want to give you time to place and work with the flower. So now what I'd like you to do is hold it up in front of you, your stem. She brought me, my neighbor who I've never met before, whose garden I'm in, brought me a purple umbrella for the internet cooling. I'd like you to place the flower standing in front of you, just holding it up in front of you straight. And I'd like you to turn it 360 degrees very slowly. And I'd like you to pause whenever it really speaks to you or touches your heart or appeals to you. Just let yourself pause when it catches your attention And then keep turning it very slowly, 360 degrees. And I'm going to see if I can get back onto the computer where I can see more of you. And when you've gone all the way around 360 degrees, I want you to just pause, take a breath, relax your heart, abdomen, shoulders, jaw, back of your neck. And then I'd like you to look at it again, 360 degrees, seeing if you can recognize those spots where you paused already on the first round. Is that clear? So just do it again, but let yourself try to rediscover those same spots you paused last time. So I'm going to turn the iPhone off for a minute because otherwise we're going to get sound feedback. So now begin gazing . And I'll be back in a moment. The eye. It's telling me I have an invalid password. Try again.
It's 108, 108.
Yeah, that's what I did. It's asking me for another password. I can't do that. Okay. Well, I'll try one more time and then I'll just go towards the using the phone. I'd rather see all of you, that's all.
It may not want to let you in with two devices, Alexandra.
Yeah, you often get a lot of feedback.
On this link, which John just sent me this morning, meeting ID. Let me turn you off.
Ellen, show me your flower.
Can you see it?
It looks like perovskia. Russian sage? No? What is it?
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
It's from the neighbor's garden. So and the neighbor doesn't know.
It's a bush. It's a bush.
It's a bush.
Yeah, perovskia, I think it is.
Good, thank you.
Russian sage. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful.
Is it fragrant, Ellen?
Yes, and also is very fragile. When I touched it, all these little pieces came off.
John and Valerie, I have to comment when you first stood up and even throughout this whole exercise, you're reminding me of the painting of American Gothic, you know, with the pitch pocket. And the goodness of the two of you.
Instead of the forks, they have the flowers.
There you go. I mean, someone should take a screenshot of that. Maybe I'm going to try to take a screenshot and send it. So adorable. Let's see if I could do this.
Wood.
Grant Wood?
Yeah.
He was the artist?
Yes. Okay. All right. Are you ready for the close-up?
Yes.
Perfect. I'll do another one and I'll email it to you. It came out pretty good.
Thank you.
I'm sending it to you.
They look more cheerful than that painting.
Well, obviously, but it captures something. I'm not sure what, but okay, it's great. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to call it American Gothic.
Actually, you know, that painting, the woman in that painting was his sister.
Right.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes,
Whose sister?
Not know that.
Grant Wood's sister.
Who's the man?
He's just a farmer in the community.
The man.
A man
Yeah.
was a farmer. A friend.
Huh.
Your dress, Valerie, is very kind of 19th century.
My t-shirt.
Oh, it looks like a dress. Oh, I can tell. Okay.
You have to see the back.
Oh, yeah, can you read the back?
Ah, beautiful.
It says, keep Boulder weird.
Okay, sorry folks, I'm back. I couldn't
Where
get
that comes from?
the iPad
A
working.
weird thing
Where's that coming from?
Alexandra's back now, Jane.
from Portland.
Alexandra's back.
Okay, I'm back and I want to try to go forward because I know people may have brunch plans. So I would like you to now just look at the vase that holds water, which is life-giving to the plant. When we hold the stem outside of water, and this is the flower as guest principle. First, we've met our guest. We've welcomed and appreciated them. We love them even. They become ours. And then, and that's okay. That's just fine. It's just the soft spot getting really vibrant. So now I'd like you to look at the stem, remembering that you had placed it in different ways and it's your guest. And it's going to be invited into the nourishment of the water. When we hold in the air, air bubbles form at the bottom of the stem and they plug the stem against water absorption. Those air bubbles travel then up the stem because the stem is drawing in continuously or trying to sustain its strength and ability not to flop, you know. And so what we need to do is cut it underwater, and that's why you have a bowl of water and you have scissors. And so what you do is you're cutting away the deadening of life in order that it might drink what sustains it and allows it to live longer. And this is the part of the principle of Ikeru, which is a root term in Ikebana, to give life. So we treat the flower as our guest by giving it what it needs. But when you cut it underwater, you're also cutting it to a certain length to place within this vase, maybe in one of those directions that appealed to you when you turned it around, or maybe when you place it, you know, gravity becomes part of it. You have some vision of how to place it, but it doesn't cooperate. So you have to kind of work with the natural forces until after cutting it underwater to a certain length and placing it in the vase, it rests naturally in such a way that it feels like it can speak. So that's what I'd like you to work with for the next few minutes. Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Just Yeah, a chorus of yes would be great. Thank you. And I'll do the same. I'm sorry I can't do it for you visually, but I think best for each of us to have our own experience anyways. So I'm going to put the phone down. I can't see you because of the glare. And let's each work with our stem. And this is the sound of one hand clapping. We've solved the koan. You may also find yourself, once it's placed or before placing it, doing a little trimming, you know, if there are damaged leaves or withered that have already gone that don't enhance the beauty of what's there. Ikebana is a process of opening, appreciation, and offering. But what are we offering? So we could be very literal and say, oh, I appreciate every single thing about it, warts and all, and finally feel beautiful for the first time in our lives. Or we could also say, you know, I could comb my hair. A friend of mine, Carol Halpern, did an arrangement once when Trungpa Rinpoche was alive, and he corrected it in front of the whole assembly. And she kind of likes gardens and things and had left it kind of wild. And he said to her, you know, even nature could comb its hair. So maybe there's some leaves or some twiglets that take away from the beauty of the shape, or they blur what else is there because there's too much to look at. So you might do a little bit of editing while appreciating it for itself. So not turning it into something that you can recognize as that plant species, but doing some editing on behalf of the flower. It did its best to grow, and now we're doing our best to offer what we see as its inherent beauty. Enjoy yourselves. Touch, sight, sound. I don't have pets, but I do have stems in my life. They're very good company. There might be aroma as you handle the materials. Our skin has natural oils. So they say that in general, we don't want to overhandle stems because the oil of our hands has an adverse effect on some plants. if you have a spray bottle, if you've kind of settled into some placement of your stem during the week, it's very nice to give a little bit of spray, especially if you live in a dry climate like I do, because once they're inside, they have no dew. So when we trim or edit the flower, it's not a sense of disrespect. It's a sense of appreciation as the flower does become more human. So if Ikebana is a very positive outlook about human beings, it says we can contribute to uplifting the world around us and help other people to enjoy it more, to appreciate it and feel their hearts. It's a pretty universal experience. And from a plant spirit medicine point of view, it's said that the plants actually would like to help us. So has everybody placed their main stem?
Yes.
And now you could also turn the vase a little bit. You know, just see where is its spot. Do you have it placed on a placemat or a piece of paper or a wooden surface? Clear the space around it so that it has complete presence. Sometimes I'll even just put a piece of black paper or a placemat or something underneath. It's called a dai, and it was originally meant to protect the raw, unfinished wood of the tokonoma, the alcove in the Japanese home where one offered flowers. But it became a part of the aesthetic of placing a vase. And so there are very many beautiful dyes, and I will try to show you mine on my camera so you can get some ideas at the very end for your own home. But you can just use a piece of paper. It can be quite beautiful. It just gives it a sense of presence. Rinpoche said it's like a throne for the flower. Or you could say a throne for your heart. So I think my neighbors are starting to get ready to come out on their porch for their breakfast. It's a little past 8:30 here.
Thank
5
you,
minutes.
Alexandra. Thank you. I have to leave. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you for telling me.
Thank you so
I'd
much.
like to hear a little, oh, you're so welcome. I look forward to seeing you in person in a couple of weeks. Maybe, after you quarantine. Do you want to say anything before you depart about your experience of anything?
Lovely. Thank you.
All right, well, I bow to you, my dear. So what would be ideal would be if we could all see what the flower stem is that we're offering, be it twig or grass or actual blossom. And then I'll kind of close, we'll close with a bow, which will be part of the sense of offering, float something down, whether it's our dirty socks or an antique china plate from our family 3 generations ago. We're always creating spaces. We're always working with form and energy in space. And we're always creating environments for ourselves and others to perceive. And that is part of our state of mind as humans. In depression, it's very hard to do this because there's so much burdening the senses in the clouds of mind and heart. And it can be very difficult to feel this or to be able to see. I remember once Antonio Wood is a psychiatrist who's now retired in the Buddhist community. He was a student of Trungpa Rinpoche's. And his wife, Adriana Wood, was a very passionate Ikebana student. And she told Kita Sensei something that my teacher, Kita Sensei from Sogetsu School, she just couldn't believe her ears when she heard. Adriana said to her that some people didn't see the Ikebana in Antonio's office. And Kita Sensei couldn't imagine what a human heart and mind would be like that couldn't see an Ikebana in the room. To her, that was like, that's not living if you can't see that. So just we can have a really huge range of tenderness. There's a beautiful poem by Ryokan, a Zen master of, I think, the 17th century. He was a very playful character. And maybe I can send you the poem on the message board, but it was something about how for months, you know, he'd be alone in the winter and spring would come, and he had one vase in his little hut on the mountain. And he just said, oh, to the peach blossom, you know, thank you for keeping me company in these long days. So I think COVID is like an expanded elevator experience in a lot of ways. And to have some living thing with us inside could be really helpful, that we give a certain space to and spend a little time. So I wanted to offer you this practice altogether from beginning to end that you could do any time in your home and awaken the space. Trungpa Rinpoche said your entire apartment could be changed with one blade of grass.
Yes.
And we could see a red flower without ego's complexity. So that's our path. So I can't see the gallery on the iPhone, I don't think, but I can shift windows. Would you like to flip your cameras to your to the stem? There's 13-year-old daughters and so forth. We sit down with each person's flower and just let ourselves experience it. There's a whole contemplative viewing process, but this is a little innovative. Very hard to see with the reflections. If you can all put your cameras on. So if you flip your camera, maybe we can't do that on this. We did it the other night in Tokyo. We flipped our cameras so that the master instructor could see our work, and well, a little bit difficult. Yeah, don't worry about the techie side. I'll figure that out for another time. So now, taking a moment before we close, we can have discussion afterwards for anyone who wants to stick around, but I want to make sure those people who need to leave can. And I'll turn my camera around too. Let's see if you can see. I'll turn it around and maybe you can see. Can you see?
No.
No.
There. Yes.
Can you see the vase and the stem?
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful.
A little bug just landed, and actually, oh, it's so sweet. He's visiting the flower I have in the camera.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give you a variety of examples. Whoops, we're getting some feedback there. I wanted to give you a variety of examples. Here's some wild mint. That's like a chabana, if you can see it, which is flowers for tea, which is very naturalistic. And there's a tiny one. Can you see the tiny one? Can you see this one?
Yes.
This is for a friend who's in a terrible custody battle, trying to have access to his 3-year-old son with a very awful situation that he's not at all to blame for. So I want to make a tiny one for him. And then one last one from the mountain field yesterday. Tell me if you can see it, please.
Yes.
And I have no idea of its name, which is just thrilling. So I can't conceptualize it. So something as simple as leaves fallen on the ground, yellow with green. So take a moment to just sit quietly with your flower and feel your heart area, relaxing your diaphragm, back of your neck, shoulders, hands. And now exert yourself to look hard at the flower, actually effort at looking. Let yourself get a little tense, like you're trying really hard to see it. I actually feel my stomach joining me in the effort. And then just relax everything. Let your eyes soften. Let the flower have its way with you. Let yourself feel that the flower might even be looking at you. You might even feel a bit of shyness. If there were a firefly or a dragonfly looking for a spot to perch, where might it visit? Which leaf or tassel might it rest on? And now just however your view of human experience is right now, there's a kind of moisture in it, right? Loneliness or longing. Each dump's trying to forage for food or something. Perfection of what's there, radiate, mingle with the flower. And let its presence be here for the sake of all creatures. That freshness and soft spot is available to all human beings. That people can appreciate and feel each other, including dogs and cats and chickens, bugs. And let's close with a bow. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves, oh, here comes the dog, of birth, old age, sickness, and death. He wants to sniff the flowers. From the ocean of samsara, may I free all the beings. Hello, Isabel. I actually wrote a dedication in particular for Ikebana practitioners, but I didn't bring it with me this morning. I had too much to load in the car and then unload and set out. So I wish you all a wonderful Saturday, and if anyone would like to linger with any questions or anything at all, but I gift you this exercise. If you share it with anyone, please acknowledge that its origins are Kalapa Ikebana Society and the Dharma art teachings of Trungpa Rinpoche.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
So beautiful, Alexandra. So John, would you like to make me host in case you need to leave?
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
And thank you to my neighbor, a total stranger who walked by. And I said, can you help me with the internet? And she said, come to our home. We have everything. And luckily they're outside of the neighborhood down Wi-Fi. So I was very lucky. They're 2 blocks over. Never met them before.
We were very lucky, really.
Thank you.
So now she said in return,